Hello. Thank you, Trisham. That's lovely. So like Trisham said, its body from the impact. The bird flew in circles around me, again, swooping, hitting the same wall over and over, each time harder, more determined. A year before this happened, the bird was growing in a nest somewhere. I was standing on a beach, watching the waves and their indecisiveness, stepping in and out of the coast, unable to get where they wanted to go. The bird was being nurtured, fed before I knew anything about it. In my bedroom, the bird continued to hit itself with the wall for hours. It would not die. I took a photo of the bird, developed it years later, and could not see it. Let's call it what it is. I don't know if you'll remember eating on the side of a pool. I remember my feet in the water, liking the way it made my toes look long and thin. I remember my hand inside a white and red striped bag, fried eggs, cold and sticky, flying saucers. I remember my little mouth, my teeth. I remember ice cream, chewing gum at the end, raw cake mix, tongue on the beaters. I remember soup with bread, then only soup, only apples for a good while. I remember looking quite long, quite thin, clothes fitting strangely, but still only apples, only hot water for a good while. I remember my mouth bigger, but my teeth less capable. Food in my mouth, then back on the plate. I remember toothpaste, chewing gum, no ice cream. I remember this. A lot of the time, this thing I can't say. Word that means my mouth, my teeth have lost their use. My mouth now is enormous. I cover it in lipstick. Onion poem. I don't know if this is a shared experience between other people that have a lot of stress and anxiety, but while it can be a really horrible thing, for me, it can also be like ridiculous and like borderline hilarious looking back on things. And this is kind of my way of trying to communicate that. And it's about an onion. So it's called There's Something I Want to Get Off Me. 7 weeks ago, I was making a stew. I had to chop up 2 large onions and fry them until they were brown and sticky before adding anything else. So I bought 2 large onions and got out a chopping board and a big sharp knife, and I peeled off the outer layer of the onions, the brown flaky bit that's always already falling off when you buy them. I went to chop the first onion and the knife was sliding all over the place, which seemed dangerous, so I examined the onion a little more and found it had a translucent skin. A second layer underneath the one I'd already taken off, which I'd never seen on my previous onions. On inspection, the second onion didn't have one, which confirmed that there was something weird about this particular onion. For a while, I looked at it, not knowing what to do. I didn't want to go back to the shops to buy another onion, because what if someone who was there before when I bought the first 2 onions recognized me and saw me buying another onion after buying 2 earlier and thought my diet primarily consisted of onions and that I was feeling particularly greedy today? How would I ever go back there? So eventually I decided to just use the weird onion, to try and pretend there was nothing weird about it. I ran my big sharp knife along the outside of the onion in an effort to make a tiny slit that I could stick my nail into. It worked, and I pushed my nail into the gap. But as I started to remove the skin, the smell of the onion became stronger, and my eyes started to sting like the onion was protesting, like it was embarrassed and confused. So I put the onion down on the chopping board and replaced the part of the skin I'd started to peel off, so the underneath, the real part of the onion, was covered up again. I stood there for a long time, looking at these 2 onions. I thought about putting them outside for a fox to eat, but do foxes even like onions? I thought about putting the weird one in the bin and just using 1 onion. I wasn't making onion stew after all, but as I looked at the onion and thought about putting it into the bin alone, I felt desperately sad. Then suddenly worried that someone might come home and see me staring at these onions, that they might ask me if I had been doing so for a long time, and what would I say? So I picked up the original onion, the weird one, and I bit into it. It tasted really bad. But after I'd swallowed the first bite, I took another and another until it was all gone. I looked down at the chopping board and the other onion, the normal one, was so there it was overwhelming. I picked it up, opened the window and threw it outside. I felt no sense of relief at all, and my breath smelled so strongly of onion. I have felt ever since that I smell a little bit like onion, that all my secrets are inside my onion breath, and that anyone who smells me will know what I did. Trip. I was taken to a large space, one of those spaces you can't see the edges of. Everyone said it would help with the thoughts. Fresh air, away from cities, other people, towards wind, fish, birds, etc. When the thoughts come now, I put myself back there. Imagine my feet sinking into sand, looking at the sea putting out its hand, then withdrawing. This poem's about a goat, and it's also about low self-worth, so we strike the balance again. Great enough. A goat having a very particular blade of grass touch him between his eyes. The ground he walks on thinking, I am so lucky to be walked on by this goat. If this goat was real, you would all be talking about his best qualities. This goat loves to let others feed before him, has always had hooves, so even before he was born, requiring the need to step at all, this goat had an inbuilt way to walk easily over everything. If you met this goat, you would want to ask him how he behaves so naturally when people compliment him, how he is able to remain loving when someone forgets his birthday, what techniques he uses to keep himself looking so well. When I think about it, I see myself as I am, but holding a bucket high up, waiting for anything to drop inside, or holding a door open, just in case, or watching the swelling of my legs on an aeroplane. I think about the absence of things, not the appearance of them, how the muscles all go soft eventually, how every person will inevitably stop growing. When it comes, the dark, I've tripped, made myself bloody, remembered that each day I've lived more days than the day before, that speaking doesn't create sense, that the mind works because it not working is optionless, that the feet move because what else will take us away from this earth. I repeatedly hold an apple to my mouth without biting it, and at the same time think about a woman standing alone at a sink washing her toothbrush. Explaining something is very difficult when you don't exist. E.g., empty packets of tissues mean the end of something. E.g., standing up in a dry bath can quieten feelings of wrongness. If I leave this door open, it looks like I expect to be followed, and some flowers actually do mean more than they let on. No one talks about the sea. No one talks about anything at all, especially inside a family home. Family homes are exercises in silence where we all hold hands. The apple means very little when taken out of context.